Hey everyone, it's your girl Aces Joy back with another homeschool video. Today we're going to talk about curriculums, resources, and most importantly, the public library. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more videos, and let's get into it. Hi, so again, my name is Candace. I make homeschool videos from the flip side of the homeschool experience. I was homeschooled K through 12, and now I'm sharing my experience with you in hopes that it will help other homeschool parents or be an inspiration to students out there who are currently homeschooled. So today we're going to talk about the resources that we used, the nitty-gritty stuff. What did I actually read and use for my education? I know we've talked about a lot of other things surrounding homeschooling, but I wanted to talk about the actual curriculums and just like study habits. And maybe not as much study habits, but really just resources that we used. Please keep in mind that I was homeschooled between 98 and 2011. A lot changed since then. This was pre-Instagram, pre-YouTube, pre-AI, and everything that's going on right now. So if some of the tips and information that I'm giving seemed a little bit archaic or manual, it's because it probably was, and that's just the age that I was growing up in. But anything that we're talking about, I believe in its power, and it still works today. And if it needs to be modernized, I trust that because you are in an age of information, you'll be able to bring it up to speed. But I just want to share what we did and what worked for us. As studious as I feel like this makes me look, I just, sometimes when I have glasses on, I feel like I can't see, and that's because I don't need them, but I use them for blue light purposes, so we're gonna ditch the glasses. Okay, so from kindergarten through 6th grade, my mom structured a lot of my daily curriculum from the Core Knowledge series. There is an icon of education, Mr. E.D. Hirsch, who created the theory of cultural literacy. E.D. Hirsch grew from fairly humble means in Kentucky, I believe. He's an Ivy League educator who ended up working in the community colleges in Virginia, and found it quite odd that many of the students that he was coming in contact with didn't know who Robert E. Lee was and didn't know who Ulysses S. Grant was. And considering that Virginia is the site of so many major Civil War battles, he just didn't understand how they had gotten to college and didn't have that information. And so that started his concept of like these basic things, ideas, people, phrases, places, words, etc., that every American should know. And he also developed this idea of cultural literacy, that our reading comprehension works in tandem with our cultural knowledge. That context is just as important as our vocabulary or our knowledge of the alphabet or grammar rules. So essentially, a student who is doing poorly in school or in their reading comprehension, their ability to excel kind of directly correlated with their knowledge of just what was going on in society. So the more you have an understanding of the symbols and signs and events of a culture, the more you'll be able to read, understand what you're reading, and just have a better educational experience and be more engaged in general. So he wrote a book based on that in the 80s, 70s or 80s. Check me on this, but somewhere in that realm. It was a bestseller, very popular, very controversial. And from this, there was an offshoot of the Core Knowledge series, and he created and developed that for children. Now it runs pre-K through 6th grade, and there are materials up through 8th grade as well. But the foundation, which he still chairs, presents this information, and every so often they update the actual books. So even though we used these books a long time ago, there are current versions of it. I'm going to pop them up on the screen if I haven't already. The Core Knowledge series is just a collection of books titled What Your Blank Grader Should Know, or like everything your blank grader should know, first grader, second grader, fifth grader, etc. And my mom would borrow these books from the public library. That's why the library system is going to be really important and a recurring theme in this video. She never purchased the books. We always got them from the public library, and she used that to craft my curriculum. So there was a lot of information, things that we actually read, even activities that are in the books themselves. The books are highly extensive, but they also serve as a guideline of this is everything that your child should know and learn at each stage of their education, because again, it's thinking about, you know, the foundation of that offshoot from cultural literacy. It's the idea that there are not just technical skills that your child should be learning, like their alphabet and like numbers, but there's also just awareness of things that they should know at appropriate levels of like history, science, literature, things like that. So sometimes there might be passages from really popular books like Peter Rabbit or something like that. There were science concepts, and the list goes on and on. So that was the meat and potatoes of my curriculum all through elementary school. And again, she's using it as a structure. So, you know, if he had a passage out of Peter Rabbit, then obviously she would go and get the entire Peter Rabbit book, and we would go through that entire book. Or if there were certain concepts in math, then she would go and get actual books that worked on those math concepts in more detail. I remember there was a book called Mall Math. I'll see if I can put that on the screen as well. I loved that book so much because it taught you math. It was a lot of word problems. I always loved word problems, probably because I'm a writer and I like to read. And so I was like, oh, it's a story. And I like that it just applied the math concepts to something that I could understand, which was like going to the mall. And I had a lot of pictures, and it was just like very illustrative, and I loved that. In addition to that, we would also go to the bookstore. Borders was really big at the time. We had Barnes & Noble as well, but Borders was our store of choice. And they had a really awesome like homeschool card. And so it gave my mom discounts on materials. And so every year she would budget a little bit of money, and whatever, you know, was in our budget at the time, she would buy workbooks. You know, it could be a workbook again on like reading or math, whatever the case might be. Again, what was coming out of those principles from, you know, what your first grader needs to know. She would go and buy workbooks for those particular lesson plans, topics, you name it. We spent a ton of time at the local library. And our librarians were awesome. Still remember like the day my parents decided that like I could get my own library card. I wasn't very old. I guess maybe I was like 7 or something like that. We went to the library all of the time. Big stacks of books, huge stacks of books. Library fines were just a thing. It was a line item on the budget. I'm kidding. That's a little extreme. But we did have library fines from time to time. And our library was really awesome. They knew that my mom was homeschooling. Like, they knew us because we were in there all the time. So like, especially because my mom was getting not like textbooks, but they were like educational materials that a lot of times, you know, it's not like people were like clamoring at the doors to check those books out. Like, sometimes I think my mom was probably the only person checking out everything your third grader needs to know or something. So sometimes they would give us like extra time and make different accommodations. You know, we might have an extra week or something with the books because they knew that she was homeschooling me. And so it was really nice to have that support. And that's why I think it's so important to make sure that we are patronizing and supporting our public libraries as much as possible, because that really was like the portal to education for me. Like I understood very early on that if I knew how to read, honestly, as long as I had the skill of reading, I could really do anything. Like, the world was open to me, you know, like that Arthur clip where it's like, having fun isn't hard, you've got a library card. That was me.
Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
I was consuming books like faster than I could breathe air. Like that was who I was from the core. Some homeschool families do opt to purchase actual curriculums because they are full curriculums. They take you through everything in any subject that you want at any stage of the game, and that's very helpful. Curriculums do have a cost to them, so if you're